Okay, welcome to Math Model, Semester 2, Study 311, Pythagorean Theorem. Alright, so number 1 says, in 10 words or less, explain what a right triangle is. A right triangle is either an isosceles or a scalene triangle that has a 90-degree angle. Okay, so I went ahead and wrote it down. Now, number 2 says, label the right triangle with the correct terms, then complete the sentences that follow. So, the two sides of a right triangle are going to be your legs, and the side that's opposite your 90 is going to be your hypotenuse. Okay, the most important side is going to be the hypotenuse because it's always going to be opposite the 90-degree angle, and your hypotenuse is always going to be your longest side. Okay, and since the word is kind of long and it won't fit, I'm just going to draw a little arrow because it will go there, and there's the side opposite the right angle and always the longest side in the right triangle. And it's also going to be the C side. Okay, so that brings us to an important theorem, Pythagorean theorem. We're used to it. It says in a right triangle, the sum of the squares of the length is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. Let's write it down. It's me. I'm going to be here. Shut up. Okay, so in a right triangle, I just labeled it like the one up at the top, but you have the two legs, which are the shorter sides of the right triangle, and then you have the hypotenuse, which is your longest side. So we'll use a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and a is going to be the length of the leg, and b is going to be the length of the second leg, and c is always your length of your hypotenuse, which is always going to be opposite your 90-degree angle. But let's write it down. Okay, wrote it down. Okay, on our next example, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the steps to find the missing side length in a right triangle. So it says the first step, write the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that's done for us. And then it says plug the side lengths that you know in. So it doesn't really matter if you do 8 is A or B is 15. It really doesn't matter. Or you could have made them B and A. It doesn't matter at all, the order on the legs. So we can put an 8 here and 15 there. And then it says square those side lengths. So 8 squared is 64 and 15 squared is 225. And then we want to find the sum of those two numbers. When we add those two together, we get 289 is c squared, and then we take the square root of 289 and we get 17. Okay, so we fill in the blanks. For Pythagorean theorem, if a triangle is a right triangle, then the square of the hypotenuse side equals the sum of the squares of its other two sides, which are the legs. Okay, and since hypotenuse won't fit on a line, that would be your word that will go right there. So then the converse is just saying it backwards. If the square of the hypotenuse side of a triangle equals the sum of the squares of its two legs, then the triangle is a right triangle. And once again, I'm just going to draw an arrow because hypotenuse won't fit. Or if you want to abbreviate hypotenuse, we abbreviate it HYP. Okay, so now it says follow the steps to determine if the triangle below is a right triangle. So now we're going to test to see. So the first step is to write Pythagorean theorem. Whoops. And it's already written for you here. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Identify the longest side of the triangle. Our longest side, always opposite our 90 degree, is going to be the 20. So we'll let that be C. And use the side of the hypotenuse in the Pythagorean theorem. Use the other two sides for the legs. So 12 squared, they let that be A. B, they let be 16. And we have to see if that equals 20 squared. Whoops, I kind of wrote over the square. And then the fourth step is to square, add, and compare. So we have 12 squared is 14, and 16 squared is 256, and 20 squared equals 400. And so since the sum of 144 and 256 equal 400, and 20 squared is 400, 400 equals 400. Since that is true, we say yes. Triangle A. They didn't label it. I'll just label it ABC. Triangle ABC is a right triangle because its side lengths satisfy the Pythagorean theorem. So number 7 says summarizing Pythagorean. A Pythagorean triple is a set of positive whole numbers that are the side lengths of a right triangle. Okay, so a common Pythagorean triple that you're going to see again and again is the 3, 4, 5 right triangle. If we multiply each of those numbers by 2, then we would get 6, 8, 10. It can be a multiple of anything. Even we could have multiplied it by 3 and got 9, 12, 15. That's another variation of the 3, 4, 5 because we just multiply by 3. Okay, 5, 12, 13, we can multiply that by 2 and get 10, 24, 26. 8, 15, 17, we can multiply that one by 2 and get 16, 30, 34. 7, 24, 25, multiply by 2, get 14, 48, and 50. So what this means is that the first two numbers, can all represent legs of a right triangle, and then the last numbers that you see here would all be the length of the hypotenuse. Now I'm gonna be honest with you, I really don't think that you need to memorize these right here because the 2, 3, 4, 5 and 5, 12, 13 are the two most common ones that you'll see. All right. Okay, so I have an extra problem for you. What about 8 if you was told to find this side length right here and you don't know it at all? So we can let that be A. All right, so we have the same Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And since I let that be A, I can do A squared plus 8 squared equals 17 squared. And anytime you're given the hypotenuse, which is here, your longest side, know that you are going to have to subtract in the end. So I can subtract that right now. A squared minus the 8 squared. So over here I'll have 8 squared is equal to 17 squared minus 8 squared. Okay, and you can put that in a calculator just like that. Okay, so we put it in the calculator. You got 17 and square buttons right there, minus 8, once again square button, and it equals 225. So this is like this is one of my favorite mistakes that I see students do. They do 225 and they put an A. And you can't leave that like that. You never took the square root, so you got to put A squared right there. And then the last step, since that is A squared, you have to do the opposite, which is the square root. And so here's what it looked like. So the next thing is to do the square root. Whoops, I pressed the wrong button. So second, and this X squared button right there, of 225. And so it looks like that. And you get 15. So A, that short side is equal to 15. Let's see if I can write it down. Okay. Okay, so your answer for the length of A, which we do not know, is going to be 15. And if you remember on the other side, the Pythagorean triple, 8, 15, 17, then that would be another way to take a shortcut and get that answer. Let's say we're trying to figure out what the side length is here for X, and we know we got a right triangle, and opposite the 90-degree angle is always going to be your C, which is your longest side, your hypotenuse. So we start just like we did before with A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And we will plug in, since we do not know, well, since that 6 kind of look like a B, I'll let that be B, and once again, I'll let X be A. So we'll have X squared plus 6 squared equals 10 squared. And 6 squared is 36. And 10 squared is 100. And so we would have to subtract 36 on, add 36. We would subtract it. 36 on both sides. and we would end up with x squared equals 64. And then our final step would be to take the square root of 64. And so x would equal 8. So this side right here would be 8. But once again, if you remember your Pythagorean triple, the 6, 8, 10 one, which was a variation of the 3, 4, 5, just multiplied by 2, we had 10, which was our 5, and then we had 6, which was our 3, and so this was our section that we needed. So that missing side is 8. Okay, and the last one that you want to do as an extra is determine if 4, 5, 6 will make a right triangle. So now we're trying to determine if it will work or not. So we use the same Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we're going to plug them in order since c is always our longest side. 4 squared plus 5 squared equals 6 squared. All right, and then we square everything. So 6 squared is 36, 4 squared, 16, 5 squared is 25. All right. So we got that same 36, and 16 and 25 added together is 41. So since 41 does not equal 36, this is not a right triangle. Okay? Okay, so good luck with your notes. Remember, I love you very much. Do the checkup practice problems before you do the quiz.